Welcome to In Session by Westside Children's Therapy, the podcast about the real work of pediatric therapy and the tools that help kids find their voice. Whether you're a parent, caregiver, therapist, this is the space where real conversations happen. Each week we sit in session with experts in the field to talk about the work, the wins, the challenges, and the science behind helping kids meet their full potential. I'm your host, Marika Cackett, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. We're in session. Welcome to this episode of In Session, the pediatric therapy podcast that talks about how kids can truly find their voice. Today we're discussing AAC, or Augmentative, and alternate communication. Make sure I communicated that correctly. There are over 2 million people in the United States that use an augmentative or alternative form to communicate. And we are joined with Mary and Megan from Westside to talk about all things AAC. So I tried to say what AAC is. What is AAC?
You did great.
Okay,
I just want to throw it out there. You did great. Yeah, but it's augmentative and alternative communication. So it is a additional communication source for sometimes our kids who are nonverbal, or maybe have a diagnosis of childhood apraxia of speech, or maybe have difficulty just producing their speech sounds and are super unintelligible. So AAC can kind of span in different amounts and levels. So we have our low tech, which is like our core boards, our buttons, our switches. And then we have mid tech, which is semi-techy, where you can change out little boards and pieces and push buttons to communicate. And then you have your high-tech devices, which are more of kind of what people kind of assume with like your iPad communication software. But they're all designed to just give us our voice and have our ability to communicate wants and needs.
I love that. I was actually really lucky to sit in on 2 AAC therapy sessions. Very, very, very different. And so I think one of the first questions people have is AAC only for children who are completely nonverbal, or is there a scale?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are people that identify themselves as part-time AAC users. So, hey, sometimes speech is just too effortful. There is so much going on in the environment, and there is still something that they have to say, but maybe verbal speech is just too much. So what else can we do? What else can we do to be heard? Well, we can send a text message. We can push a button. We can find a symbol. We can spell something. So it's about meeting people where they are in terms of their communication and providing them an opportunity to say what they got to say.
What are maybe some of the more typical diagnoses that you see for children, and certainly in pediatrics, for children that have or need an AAC device?
Well, we work with a variety, I would say. A lot of times we think of our children who are diagnosed with autism. I've had some patients who have SMA or spinal muscular atrophy. I've also worked with some pediatric patients who've had traumatic brain injuries or pediatric in utero strokes who've used it, as well as kids with childhood apraxia of speech. So I feel like there's a lot of varieties. And I know Megan works with a very robust caseload of AAC, so she probably has some other diagnoses.
Yeah, I sure do. And it's however that client comes into therapy. Mm-hmm. So I have some that were from birth have cerebral palsy. And so it's taking, hey, what were you born with? And how do we give you the best tools in your toolbox to make your message known?
So kind of, we talk about low, medium, high. What are some low-tech AAC devices that parents might actually be using that they don't even realize they're using an AAC device?
Yeah, you betcha. So we brought a couple examples today. So you might have something like a recordable button saying something like this. Go. Can say something like go. It can be a picture symbol. It can be a word on the refrigerator magnet. But it's any way that you can get a word into the child's hand. And this might be, one singular thing. This is not meant to last them a lifetime by any means, but how can we show just some other communication options and then branch forward into maybe some bigger and better stuff? So Mary's got some other examples too.
I have a high-tech communication device, which comes with multiple softwares, which is why it's really important to work with a speech therapist to determine what software and what hardware is best for your child. But another high-tech one here, Megan used the word go. Here's another example.
Go.
And we can even put a sentence together because this has more robust vocabulary, like
I go. I go.
I go. And we use different kind of forms of communications based off of their needs.
And so that obviously is an example of a more high-tech, like an iPad. But I think one of the concerns when we were doing research for this episode said that parents were concerned that if they used those type of devices that their child might never actually be able to learn to speak. Is that a deterrent? Is that, something that parents should be concerned about?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that we get very often when coming in for a screening or an AAC evaluation. The research says no, that it's not going to prevent mouth words from developing by any means. In fact, it can only help to draw these connections and show how language actually works together, and you can rearrange the parts to form different word order. And that's what makes, Mary's utterances different than my utterances, and why we're both different and interesting people. But all of that, being said, it's working with a speech therapist to help figure out, what tools could help supplement what my child already has. And I also want to just say that mouth words or verbal communication is the gold standard. So if you don't need this, I don't want to give you this. If you don't need that, I don't want to give you that. But if you desperately need a way to get your voice heard, yeah, let's get something in your hand that can help you.
Because AAC doesn't, and I want to make this clear to parents, using an AAC device doesn't mean you've given up on the goal of verbal speech. Never. Because that is, of course, the gold standard. So for parents, of a toddler or a preschooler up to high school, how do the AAC devices sort of change based on age?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And when we talk about AAC devices, we want to think about, okay, a device that they get at age 2 may not need all of the vocabulary that they're going to need at 21, but it can grow with the child. And that looks different for every single person that walks through the door. So I can't say, we're going to start this child with 84 buttons versus 60 buttons versus 25 versus 108. That's what your speech therapist will work with you to help figure out based on what your child can do and what they need to grow to be able to do.
Yeah, and with that, the really cool part is we're starting off with 1 button pushes, communications, some of our softwares allow kids to read books and talk about literacy, and they can use their whiteboard as practicing for communication. But as we get older, I send text messages. I know a teenager is going to want to do that. I had a kid ask to use Alexa and ask for her to listen to Baby Shark at home. And that was a huge milestone because we've been working on that for over 2 years in speech, is just to put a sentence together, let alone the mom's crying in the other room because they talk to Alexa, which is so cool. So this is just kind of that supportive communication that we use to help them develop as they grow.
So how is AAC introduced into therapy? I mean, what kind of learning curve are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I feel like with every child, there's always nuances to each person that walks through the door, but we want to give them access to everything. So when they come in for an AAC evaluation, I'm not just showing, 1 button pushes. I'm showing that robust vocabulary from age 2 to age 22 because everyone can communicate.
And I think if you were to come into our sessions and look at our speech gym, they're covered in visuals. They're covered in words. A lot of our friends, even that are in ABA or in speech, there's some kids who are practicing sounding out the words, and there's that picture visual. We have giant core boards everywhere. We have multiple devices out in sessions. We have books that even speak for the words. So we have such a robust opportunity provided.
And, it seems to me for kids, there's such a range. But so if a child comes in, what is the process for a parent who feels that their child might need some sort of AAC device, whether that's a certain diagnosis or therapy? How does a family go about? And like you said, there are, from a button to a very involved tablet. Kind of walk us through the process of a parent getting a child a device and how that works.
Yeah, you bet. So what that's going to look like is you're going to attend a speech and language evaluation first, and it's figuring out, okay, well, my child doesn't maybe have those 50 words or up to those 200 words. So what can we do to help you? And so that's where they come in for the AAC evaluation. It's what else can we do to help you? Because maybe traditional speech and language therapy hasn't provided the outcomes that the family is looking for. And so then it's meeting that child and that family with where they are and bringing the joy and saying, okay, what does your child love to communicate? What do they want to be able to communicate about? And how can we bridge those together? So bubbles, for example, maybe that's a favorite thing. So in that AAC evaluation, we're going to be pulling out the bubbles and showing first all of that motivating vocabulary so that there's buy-in to use this super cool tool to get wants and needs met. And then that eventually changes from it being a tool to your voice. And that shift happens as you get more buy-in from family, as the client gets more buy-in, and really you're building a relationship with the technology in addition to with your therapist. So you're building not only therapists with the people that are showing this thing, but hey, I've got to start liking this thing that's going to be my best friend so that people can hear what I have to say.
And it seems to me, again, we go back to this theme of play in therapy. And one of the sessions that I was able to sit in with Megan, we used an AAC device and we danced and we sang and we watched YouTube videos. So, again, it's this concept of like play therapy. So tell us, what does an AAC therapy session look like, or is it more of a speech therapy with an AAC device as opposed to an AAC session? What's the kind of the correct nomenclature there?
I would say it looks similar to a speech session with an AAC supportive communication device, but also you're kind of meeting the kids where they're at and their interest level. I did a whole lesson for multiple weeks about space, and we just hung out on the space page and we're saying 3, 2, 1, blast off. And then we would sing the planet song, and the kid was telling me to watch the planet song and labeling the planets in there. So sometimes we also incorporate what motivates them to show off their voice to make them excited to communicate. And now they're going to different places like the planetarium. They're studying star constellations. And it's kind of opened up a door where parents who thought, I don't know what my kid's into, and they like maybe 1 or 2 toys. Now kids are showing interest. They're showing passion areas. And that's really cool to me because I get to be like, hey, did you know your kid likes space? Because I didn't, but that's what we learned today.
Yeah. So then, like, how are you then, for a caregiver or a parent, how are they involved in, the everyday therapy of a child using this augmentative device?
Yeah. And that's something that and I know I say this, please come to the therapy session, join in, because you are going to know your child the best. So if you can help me to help your child teach me about who they are, then I can bring the therapy fun to make communicating exciting. So, you mentioned the example where we were dancing and we were singing. She loves singing and dancing and doing all of those factors. So I came in with a completely different therapy plan that day, and she told me, no, absolutely not. We're not doing that. And so I gave her the therapy space to say, okay, that works for me. Thank you for saying no to this other topic. Now let's dive in and tease apart all the language pieces that you do care about.
And, one of the interesting things too is when you have children from a very multicultural background and you have different cultures understanding the use of technology, but also I will never get over this. I was able to watch a session where a family had some very colorful 4-letter words on the AAC device, but that's how they spoke. So, really, these devices are very programmable based on culture and likes. That's just incredible.
It is. It's really incredible that we can give children the ability to have their voices heard. And one of the cool things that I've learned from Megan as being an AAC evaluator is, not only do these devices have their personality, their buttons, what their interests are, but we can take small snippets of sound that they make and turn it into a programmable voice that is identified as their own voice. So it's not this automatic robot, childish sounding voice. It's the sounds that they made that turn into their voice, which makes it even more personable.
Yeah.
So how do you support an AAC device or a child in a school setting with an AAC device?
That's a great question. And that comes from having access to multidisciplinary teams. At Westside, we work together with physical therapists, occupational therapists, feeding therapists, to kind of set a foundation for, hey, this is how you're communicating. But that means that's this thing, this device, this voice that is now yours is how you're going to communicate with all the people at Westside. That means, hey, that's how you're going to communicate with all these people at school. And so it's building that relationship with the family, and then the family helps bridge that that relationship with the school, so that everyone's working together so that the child can be heard everywhere.
It seems to me like with AAC devices, just it's not just simply buying an iPad or buying a button. Can you kind of walk us through what the evaluation process looks like? And I mean, how do parents pay for this? I mean, how do you, is this something that's covered by insurance? Is this something you just go to Apple, you go to Walmart and you buy a tablet and you upload software? So kind of walk us through that process.
It's a lot of steps. I mean, I will say this is the one thing I wasn't prepared for is families are like, okay, so I'm going to go to Apple, buy the iPad, and then I'm just going to buy random software. I had a parent come in, buy an iPad and random software and go, okay, make it work. And I was like, but we don't know if it works. Like, we don't know if this is the right software system. So I would say that AAC evaluation is really great. And we kind of narrow it down to a few options, usually, unless this kid is like flying colors one direction, and kind of break it down for families and provide a sheet that allows also families to have a decision, because there's different manufacturers that have different costs. Like you have, Megan explains this really well. She says, you can go buy your new car or you can buy a used car. Both cars run, but also what's financially more responsible for your family? What's the best outcome for your family? And also, what are you getting out of that too for your warranty reasons? But we provide families all the options. They call their insurance company. And before they agree to a device and we make that final decision, family knows that cost right up front. And it can be a scary number. I had some moms calling me being like, this is a lot of money. And I said, I know. And sometimes their primary insurance doesn't cover it all. Sometimes we have a secondary insurance that can pick up some of it. But the really cool thing that Megan has also done at Westside is she's brought together different speech therapists at the company. And we have this AAC committee. And one of the cool things is that I'm on the committee and I also look up grants, and I'm a nerd for research, but we have over 36 grant options for families. We don't want you to be burdened with the financial responsibility of this. We want your kid to communicate. So if we can help you in any way and take that financial load off, or come up with different ways to support a fundraiser or GoFundMe, we're going to do it, because your kid's voice matters.
That's incredible. So and it seems to me like through these devices, children are really finding their voice. So in addition to finding their voice, whatever that may look like, what other sort of milestones or sort of things that you're seeing kids being able to do now with their AAC device?
Oh gosh, the sky's the limit. So anything that people are doing verbally, you can do with an AAC device, you can do with tech. And that is some of the coolest parts about being in a tech age. With AI, those possibilities are just going to keep climbing and be, limitless. And so when you ask, what can you do? You can use Alexa to do a million things. You can
play Baby Shark.
Right, play Baby Shark. You can have Alexa dispense dog treats for your dog. You can have it turn on a Roomba. You can have it turn on your television. And so for clients that might need that extra support or that supportive communication partner, you're building that in the tech so that, hey, Alexa can also get me what I need when I need it. If my family helps program the lights, I can turn the lights on and off. I can turn the fan on if I'm hot. And you're building trust in the technology to work and to help regulate the environment around you by what you're saying and how you're saying it.
So then I would think that you would also start to see very positive changes in a child based on their ability to communicate. So what are some of the changes you might see in a child using an AAC device?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm looking for is joy. You should be excited to be able to talk about the things that you've always wanted to talk about, or do the things that you've always wanted to do. So you were talking about the family with colorful language. For him to be able to have colorful language back and participate in that socially is so empowering. So to see the laughs and the smiles and the shoulders lifting, I mean, that's telling you, all right, we programmed something right for this family.
What are, and I think that's one of like the best really success stories is just having a child now who wasn't able to communicate now was really part of the family and a part of the conversation. And I'll never forget, there was a button on the iPad. I think it said like, "Oh, mom," or something like that. And we were talking and he goes, "Oh, mom." And it was, and everyone laughed. I mean, he really felt like he was part. I mean, they now have a voice. I mean, that's really, really incredible. So tell us a little bit more about like some of the things that this technology is enabling children and families to do.
Well, when you mention that, it makes me think of, the power of one word. So we think about like the tone or the inflection of one word. So you can say mom, you say, "Mom, mom, mom. And you can change all of those nuances in the text so that when you're saying mom, is it a statement? Is it a question? Are you yelling? And that, learning of one word, let's say, maybe it is really hard to learn one word because your body just wasn't built to do this life. And so if you can say one word, but say that in a million different inflections, imagine the power you have just with learning one word.
Incredible. Are there some apps or again, in this super techie AI age, are there, for parents that are considering that AAC might be the right, avenue for them, are there certain apps or devices that you feel are out there that if for parents that are starting to look into AAC that they can sort of research? And because we're looking at a tablet or a push button. So what's kind of out there for parents that are nervous about and maybe not ready to go fully into a full AAC device, but what's out there for research for parents? A lot.
There's a lot. And the reason I pause there too is because I'm almost hesitant to dive into all of the companies and all of the software and all the people that support those that are limited, non-speaking, limited speaking, haven't talked yet, but might. And I don't want to limit what that looks like because AI is developing so rapidly. But there are many tools in your toolbox as parents to, go to Google, and you're going to have worries and nerves about what is out there. So I would say go directly to the source. As speech therapists, I'm going to point you to ASHA.com, which is our leading governing body. And they're going to give you all the latest and greatest about the research behind AAC. And then that will give you a springboard for some of the other avenues. But maybe Mary has something else she wants to add here.
No, I agree with Megan on a lot of things. And I think some of those softwares that we look at with kids, maybe they're not ready for 60 buttons. Maybe they're not ready for 108. Some of those softwares or those cause and effect things where you can, when you tell your kid, put it in, or the dog, I think of Dilbert the dog. That's what I immediately went to on Grid. It's this cute little dog, and he is hungry for sausages, and the sausages come in his bowl, and he gobbles them up. Now, if you're ready for him to be done, you can hit stop. You can talk about it. You can do different things where I think if you have that cause and that effect, and they're starting to understand that relationship, AAC is such a powerful tool that's just that springboard for the future.
Yeah. And so for parents who are, I think, there's so much out there, leave it to the experts. Get an AAC evaluation. So what is involved in evaluating in an AAC evaluation? What is that? What does that mean? If a parent thinks that, that might be for them, what are the steps?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll let Mary kind of start it off, and then I'll add in a few snippets here.
Well, I'm a recent evaluator. Megan trained me this year, so I'm going to throw that in there. But I did have some experience before, but Megan created this really cool process where it is very streamlined, I think, for families, because you start off with the family and the kid with their therapist, the person that they trust. We build that relationship with, and we're providing multi-forms of communication, trialing it, and they open that conversation door if the parent hasn't already brought it to them about, hey, let's look at AAC. Let's see what it looks like. And when you come into that eval, I was not prepared for all the cool and craziness that this eval is, but also all the joy that it brings. So I tell families, they look at this wall and it's all facts about their kid, things that they like to talk with, the environment they like to talk in, the things they like to do, who's in their family, who's on their team, what are our frustrations, but what are our strengths? And I remember all the parents look at it and go, that's my kid. That's my kid on the wall. And I said, okay, let's dive in and get to know your kid. So we're pulling out buttons, we're pulling out cord boards, we're pulling out devices. I feel like Mary Poppins with a bag that never stops ending. And it's kind of funny because my name is Mary. But we're swapping softwares, we're throwing balls, and then we're done with balls. And here comes the balloon, and we're pumping up the balloon. And parents are like, gee, is everything good? I'm like, yeah, we're learning through play. We're communicating through play. And then we kind of have a conversation at the end of the eval of what are your child's strengths and what softwares and hardwares are your strengths. And we kind of start narrowing it down because we're a team. It's not just your child trying to pick something out and you're a parent going, I don't know where I'm going. We're a team because at the end of the day, if we have parent buy-in and we have kid buy-in, we're not going to have device abandonment. We're not going to have to see that device sitting out the software. And then we take all the information we learned and take it home to their home team and say, hey, look, this is what we learned. This is what we want to trial. And then they trial it with their home therapist. They trial it at home. We send these devices home, and then we make a decision as a team, and then we go for funding it. And that is honestly the funnest part, because parents are sitting there waiting for that box to come to their door, because that's like the end process. But that's probably just a tad bit of it, because Megan has done so much to make it so robust.
That was perfect. But this should be Disney World when they come for an AAC evaluation. This should be the most fun thing that this kid has ever done in their life. So at the end of an evaluation, I am sweating. I am like jumping, I'm moving, I'm doing all of the things because I'm doing whatever that kid wants to be able to communicate. So, I am a little rogue when it comes to what I actually do in therapy, but there's always a structured framework in the background behind it. But there was one eval that the kid wanted to squirt himself in the face with water. And so we squirted each other in the face for 60 minutes. But what he was doing with that device was amazing. And parents were crying and happy just because he was doing it. And I didn't make him change who he was in that moment. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to need to put my makeup on again. And we did it.
Well, again, I mean, I think it comes back to it's communication, it's trust, it's play. And a lot of these devices, I mean, a child might be completely nonverbal, but also, again, it's augmentative. A child might have some verbal ability. So it's, like anything, it's a spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. So if a parent has concerns, would they need to go to their physician first, or could they go directly to an eval at Westside?
They would need to go to their physician first to be able to get a script, which says, hey, we need more support. And then once we have that script on file, then we would move forward with scheduling the evaluation for about 90 minutes. And then Mary mentioned the word trial. What that means is we're not going to drop tech in anyone's lap and say, this one is best, go use it. We're going to say, here are some options. Let's give you a chance to be hands-on with them to see what your child likes the best, what you like the best, because a used AAC system is going to be the best one. So Mary mentioned the word abandonment. We don't want this sitting in a closet or behind this couch or in a backpack. This should be, with them, and we have to like it. So, at the end of the day, family, what do you like? What are you going to hang out and use with your kid? And that's often where the conversation lends itself to. If we come down to deciding between a few, it's parents. What do you like? What are you going to talk about with your child? And how do you like the way the buttons are organized? And can you do this every day?
And how often, in these conversations, obviously you have to have parental buy-in, but what about the family as a whole? If brothers, sisters, and I remember a certain kiddo with a device had his dog on there, and the dog, and each they had like 6 pit bulls. It was amazing, and each pit bull had like a different name, obviously, and like a button, and so more than just stop. More than simple basic commands. We're talking more advanced communication about dogs and favorite movies and Ninja Turtles and like all this stuff. So like, I think it's to give parents an idea. There's a lot of hope out there. And a child can really, even though they do not communicate in a traditional way, their life isn't any less full.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's just changing the platform. You're just like we're sitting here talking right now. There could easily be one of my clients sitting right here doing this via their AAC device. Maybe that's a cool next idea. Anyway, but all of that being said, you can do the same exact thing. So we talk about like core vocabulary versus fringe vocabulary. Well, for some clients, that fringe is what's most important to them. So having stuff like your dog's names. I would have my dog Donner, my son Jason, husband Brian, but for each individual client that comes to the door, that's going to look really different. And so that is what we as speech therapists spend time doing. It's what vocabulary do you need in your home? What do you want your kid talking about? And let's program all that stuff in.
I would agree with that. I had one kid want to have their dogs bark because that's like what's so special to them, because there's like some devices where you have the sound of a dog and he's like, well, why can't it be mine? I'm like, there's no reason I can't be. And the door's limitless. I love when I sit down with parents and I go through a questionnaire that's like 20 pages long and they go, you really look at everything. I'm like, yeah, I want to know exactly like what playground your kid likes to go to, who your favorite kids' teachers are at school, what toys are available and accessible to you. I wanted to make it so exciting that when they come home, they just want to tell you everything about their day, their whole world. And I have parents who literally have multiple backup chargers because if that device breaks down, the kid is like, this is not fair. It's my words. And just the joy that they can share with their siblings and talk to them and now wrestle and tickle and chase. I mean, parents, that's all they live for. They want that sibling interaction.
Yeah. And I think, in some of the other podcasts we talked about, so this tool makes sense, but really with an AAC device, it's just getting to know your kid and what buttons do you want on there? And the sky's really the limit. Do I want my dog to bark? Do I want to say, this is my favorite Ninja Turtle? Or we had one kiddo who loved the Friends theme, and he had all of the different, like he had Chandler and Ross and Rachel. And, so like, I just think for parents, like there's a lot of opportunity and hope out there. And, for messages for parents, this is accessible. And I think maybe, kind of walk us through, it's accessible. We can find funding. It's not a lost cause.
Yeah, definitely. If there's a will, there's a way. And I know at Westside, if you come in for an evaluation for a speech generating device and that cost, that big scary number you may get or may not get from insurance, we're going to figure out a way to be able to get that tool in your toolbox so that it is no longer a tool, but transforms into, the words for your child. And you mentioned having some specialty vocabulary as well that's motivating for each client. That is the hallmark of personalizing and making it a voice.
It's not just like an out-of-the-box iPad and this is truly customized.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
And I think that's maybe a common misconception that parents have as well. It's just stop, go, I have to go to the bathroom, what have you. But we're talking favorite Friends characters, like
there's talking all the things, and we talk about, at age 2, we have an AAC device, but you might still have that AAC device up to 22. So your vocabulary is going to change and your interests are going to change. You might start talking about girls. You might start, and that's where the Megan Fox thing, comes in, and being able to comment on all of that. And you need a vocabulary that can grow with you from age 2 to age 22 if you need it.
I was actually going to say the same thing about the interest in growing. And, I think back to some of my older patients that I worked with previously, they don't feel lost and they feel like they have hope for going on dates, having a wife, having kids. And it's not something that hinders you. It's something that opens a door, and then you can open a window and you can keep going down this rabbit hole. And the pages are limitless. The vocabulary is limitless. As long as we can program it, if we can't, we will call the companies, and usually their suggestions are like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's change it. Let's get a new version of that. Because all the thing we want to do is give people their voices and make them feel heard and make them feel special. Because that's what they are. They're special people in our lives.
And that's what AAC does. Well, thank you, Megan and Mary. We really appreciate it. And that is what Westside does. We are here to help children find their voice in whichever way they can. So we will see you next time on In Session.